everyone. Today we will about to discuss Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. But before I proceed to our discussion, I would like to present or to discuss the dynamics of our report. First, I'm going to discuss about the Romantic period wherein Frankenstein, the novel, was written. Second is the discussion of how does Mary Shelley come up with the novel Frankenstein. And third is the story itself. We'll try to discuss what the story is, and the fourth is we'll try to discuss or analyze the novel itself, Frankenstein. So I hope you enjoy our report. So in our discussion on Frankenstein, first we will discuss on the Romantic period. So the Romantic period mainly started on 1798 on the first edition of publication of William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge lyrical ballads. These lyrical ballads sought to reject the neoclassic system in favor of more direct speech derived from folk traditions, and both poet William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge were also involved in utopian social thought in the wake of a French Revolution. So, the Romantic period ended during 1832, the year which marked the death of the novelist Sir Walter Scott. However, the international movement called Romantic period started in 1770 and ended in 1870, and this is the movement which is not about romance or love, but about the disillusioned liberals who were tired of the common people being oppressed by tyrant rulers. We begin at least in the Romantic period begins at least in the 1770 and continues in the second half of the 19th century, and its primary vehicle of expression was in poetry. Okay, so when we talk about poetry in the Romantic period, there is new emphasis on common language and the depiction of apparently everyday experiences and experimentation with new non-classical artistic forms. And there is also the belief in the natural goodness of man and the idea that a man in a state of nature would behave well that is hindered only by civilization. And also in the Romantic poetry, there is a development of romantic individualism. That is, the belief that what is special in a man is to be valued over what is representative. And also in romantic poetry, we can see the major characteristics that is evident in this period, like imagination, freedom, emotion, and nature, as what I mentioned a while ago, which is so different from the neoclassical characteristics, which is reason, logic, and reason, logic, and order. And aside from these three major characteristics, there is also Romantic poetry is also full of symbolism. Later on in the discussion of the writing of Frankenstein, our reporter will try to discuss or will try to say about symbolism evident in the novel Frankenstein. So, Romantic poets during the Romantic period is divided into two generations. The first generation is characterized by emphasis on self and its relationship with nature. So, by the way, the division in two generations corresponds to the actual age of difference between the two groups and the changes in the context where they wrote and certain features of their work. So, a shorter period of optimism about the French Revolution succeeds a longer period of despair and pessimism caused by the generation of the Revolution of Terror. So in the first generation, we have the poets William Blake, William Wordsworth, and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and the last two remember, wrote the lyrical ballads. So the poets of the first generation passed from a hopeful support to the new issues concerning man and society, and to a hopeful abandonment of their ideals, turning from fervent progressive activists into resigned conservatives. That is more so with Wordsworth, whose longer life makes him more and more complacent toward conservatism. And the retirement of William Wordsworth to the Lake District is a clear manifestation of his incapability to keep his revolutionary ideals concerning man and human liberties. So the second generation of poets in the Romantic period is more interested in the problems connected with the relationship between life and art. And the second generation of Romantic poets is quite different from the first because they are the true incarnation of the Romantic revolt. Their rebellion is total war without truce and aiming at the affirmation of extreme individualism. Like for example, George Lord Byron, or the triumphant aspiration of the freedom and equality, which is Percy Bysshe Shelley, or the proclamation of a new ethical philosophy centered on beauty and truth, which is John Keats. So that is the true generation of romantic poets in the Romantic period. So that will be all. Thank you.
So there would be no Frankenstein if there's no author, right? So she is Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein. And she was born as Mary Wollstonecraft in London in 1797, and she died at the age of 54 because of the brain tumor. And she was 19 years old when she wrote this Gothic novel in 1816, and at the same time she was married to a poet named Percy Shelley, and he's the one who helped Mary with the editing process of the novel. So Mary was having a vacation at Lake Geneva in Switzerland, and this is the place where she made the novel Frankenstein. So since the weather was unseasonably cold, for entertainment, Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, Lord Byron, and Jane Shermont would sit around reading ghost stories. And on June 15, 1816, an issue was challenged among the four of them to see who could write the most terrifying story. So take note that Mary Shelley's story is based on life experiences, her dream, and scientific research and experiments of the time period. So she had previously suffered nightmares in 1815 after her daughter died 2 weeks after birth. So repeatedly, Mary dreamt her baby was just cold and that she herself brought her daughter back to life after massaging the infant's lifeless body. So on June 15, 1816, so Mary experienced a different nightmare in which she dreamt of a pale student of unhallowed arts creates a living being from dead parts, and unhallowed means against what is considered holy and sacred, immoral and unethical according to society's standards. So that dream was the basis for her Gothic story, and ironically, Mary Shelley was the only one out of the group to finish her tale of terror. And in 1818, this is the time on when the novel was published when she was 21, and she went on to publish other works but not ever much the popularity of Frankenstein. So here is the influence of science of Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein. So the latest scientific theories of chemistry and electricity influenced Mary Shelley, wherein the protagonist of Frankenstein is the first embodiment of the theme of science, in which he creates a human being through the use of electricity and chemistry. So Mary Shelley was not based on her dreams alone. So in the early 1800s, scientists were obsessed on finding a way to bring the dead back to life. So Mary found this idea fascinating and kept current with all new experiments taking place during her time. So he's Luigi Galvani, and one of the scientists who did some experiments on bringing the dead back to life. And he believed that electricity was the life force for living beings. And he would take dead animals and shock their bodies with high current of electricity. So the corpse will jolt when shocked with electrical currents. So his nephew, Giovanni Aldini, is the one who took the experiment one step further. So in June 17, 1803, he publicly performed this experiment on the corpse of a human being, a prisoner that has been executed by. So he attached the live wires to the corpse with 120 plates of zinc and 120 plates of copper. So the muscles of the live corpse were shocked to such a degree that the corpse appeared animated to the public. So here are some examples of the experiments. So now, what are the characteristics that make Frankenstein a romantic novel? So the first one is the love of nature. So no one can conceive the variety of feelings which bore me onwards, like a hurricane with the first enthusiasm of success. Life and death appeared to me ideal bounds, which I should first break through. A new species would bless me as its creator and source. Many happy and excellent natures would owe their being to me. So Victor Frankenstein is a romantic character to the extent that he reflected writers' emphasis on a new way of seeing, and the Romantics believed that it is the individual and the collective imagination that would create a new understanding of the world and lead to a more perfect version of human beings and the societies in which they live. So Victor is the ultimate character who is preoccupied by the worldly concerns and unattainable ideals. So in this sense, he is highly romantic. So the second one is the belief in the power of the individual. So 6 years have passed since I resolved on my present undertaking. I can even now remember the hour from which I dedicated myself to this great enterprise, and that could be found on page 10 of the novel. So do I not deserve to accomplish some great purpose? My life might have been passing ease and luxury, but I prefer glory to every enticement that will place in my path, and that could be found on page 11 of the novel. So the third one is the desire to explore the unknown. This breeze, which has traveled from the regions towards which I am advancing, gives me foretaste of those icy climes. Inspirited by this wind of promise, my daydreams become more fervent and vivid. So the next line is, I shall satiate my ardent curiosity with the sight of a part of the world never before visited. So the last one is the symbolism. So thus spoke my prophetic soul as torn by remorse, horror, and despair. I beheld those I loved spend vain sorrow upon the graves of William and Justin, the first helpless victims to my unhallowed arts. So Justin and William symbolize innocence in this line. So they are both blameless and represent the domino effect of innocent lives that will fail due to man's mistake. So some might consider Frankenstein a Gothic novel. So by the way, what is Gothic novel? So a Gothic novel is an English genre of fiction popular in the 18th to early 19th centuries, characterized by an atmosphere of mystery and horror and having a pseudo-medieval setting. So why is Frankenstein considered a Gothic novel? So the answer is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is considered a Gothic novel because it incorporates numerous elements of Gothic literature, including a dark setting, the supernatural, the sublime, and an atmosphere of terror and horror. So the Gothic elements in Frankenstein are, the first one is the dark setting, where the protagonist is isolated from society, namely Frankenstein's laboratories. And the second one is the supernatural. So what supernatural is this? So it is by creating the monster, Frankenstein transgresses the barriers between life and death. So the third one, the sublime, or the feeling of terror aroused by the powerful and fathomless forces of nature. So the sublime is present during the storm in which Frankenstein sees the monster after the death of his brother. So the fourth one is an atmosphere of terror and horror. So terror is the anticipation of death, danger, or supernatural, while horror is their realization. Frankenstein's monster induces horror and its hideous appearances and terror as it stalks Frankenstein and his family. So now let us define on what is the differences between the novel and the movie. So in the novel, the love scene is not presented, while in the movie, the love scene is presented. So the deformity of monster in the novel is the yellow skin, black lips, and 8 feet height. While in the movie, the deformity of the monster is white skin and 6 feet height only. So in the novel, the death of Caroline is the scarlet fever, while in the movie, the death of Caroline is after giving birth of William. Okay, next one is Elizabeth didn't came at Victor's laboratory. That could be found on the novel. But in the movie, Elizabeth visited at Victor's laboratory. And in the novel also, Monster brought wood for the Lacey family. But in the movie, Monster digging vegetables for the Lacey family. So next, the murder of William, where Victor was not in home. But in the movie, the murder of William, Victor was at home, specifically in Geneva. So in the novel, Felix and Agatha are siblings and their father is Mr. de Lacy. But in the movie, Felix and Agatha are married and have 2 children. And that would be all. And if you ever ask me if what are those movie, I cannot tell you what are the time on when they adapted that movie, because there are a lot of movies being adapted in the novel Frankenstein.